What's up, everyone? This is Mike History 2, and today I will be talking about one of the most famous people of all time. Of course, as you can tell from the title, I'll be talking about Christopher Columbus. Now, if my voice is kind of low, it's because I'm recording this at 2 a.m. on October 1st. So, yeah, if you want louder volume, just you know, increase the volume. But anyways, I don't need to introduce Christopher Columbus because you guys all know who he is, so let's get straight to the action. So, his early life is obscure, but scholars believe he was born in Genoa between August 25th and October 31st, 1451. His father was Domenico Colombo, a wool weaver who worked both in Genoa and Savona, and who also owned a cheese stand at which young Christopher worked as a helper. His mother was Susanna Fontanarossa. He had three brothers, Bartolomeo, Giovanni Pellegrino, and Giacomo, as well as a sister named Bianchinetta. His brother Bartolomeo worked in a cartography workshop in Lisbon for at least part of his adulthood. His native language was probably a Genoese dialect, although Columbus never wrote in that language. His name in 16th century Genoese would have been Cristoforo Colombo. His name in Italian is Cristoforo Colombo, and in Spanish, Cristobal Colon. In one of his writings, he says he went to sea at the age of 10. In 1470, the Columbus family moved to Savona, where Domenico took over a tavern. In the same year, Christopher was born on a Genoese ship hired in the service of René of Anjou to support his attempt to conquer Naples. In 1473, Columbus began his apprenticeship as a business agent for the wealthy Spinola, Centurione, and Di Negro families of Genoa. Later, he made a trip to Chios, an Aegean island then ruled by Genoa. In May 1476, he took part in an armed convoy sent by Genoa to carry valuable cargo to northern Europe. He likely docked in Bristol, England, and Galway, Ireland. He may have also gone to Iceland in 1477. It is known that in the autumn of that year he sailed on a Portuguese ship from Galway to Lisbon, where he found his brother Bartolomeo, and they continued trading for the Centurione family. Columbus based himself in Lisbon from 1477 to 1485. He married Filipa Moniz Perestrello, daughter of the Porto Santo governor and Portuguese nobleman of Lombard origin, Bartolomeu Perestrello. In 1479 or 1480, Columbus's son Diego was born. Between 1482 and 1485, Columbus traded along the coast of West Africa, reaching the Portuguese trading post of Elmina at the Guinea coast in modern-day Ghana. Before 1484, Columbus returned to Porto Santo to find that his wife had died. He returned to Portugal to sell her estate and take his son Diego with him. He left Portugal for Castile in 1485, where he found a mistress in 1487, a 20-year-old orphan named Beatriz Enriquez de Arana. It is likely that Beatriz met Columbus when he was in Cordoba, a gathering site of many Genoese merchants and where the court of the Catholic monarchs was located at certain times. Beatriz, unmarried at the time, gave birth to Columbus's son Fernando Columbus in July 1488. Columbus recognized the boy as his son, even though he was illegitimate. Now, Columbus eventually learned Latin, Portuguese, and Castilian. He read widely about astronomy, geography, and history, including the works of Claudius Ptolemy, Pierre Cardinal d'Alili's Imago Mundi, the travels of the famous Marco Polo, and Sir John Mandeville, Pliny's Natural History, and Pope Pius II's Historia Rerum Ubique Gestarum. Now, for some context about what he's most famous for, or his expeditions, under the Pax Mongolica, Europeans had enjoyed a safe land passage, the Silk Road, to maritime Southeast Asia, parts of East Asia, and China, which were sources of valuable goods. Now, with the fall of the Constantinople to the Ottoman Sultanate in 1453, the Silk Road was closed to Christian traders. In 1470, the Florentine astronomer Paolo dal Pozzo Toscanelli suggested to King Afonso V of Portugal sailing west across the Atlantic would be a quicker way to reach the Maluku or Spice Islands, China and Japan, and then route around Africa, but Afonso rejected his proposal. In the 1480s, the Columbus brothers proposed a plan to reach the East Indies by sailing west. By 1481, Toscanelli had sent Columbus a map implying that a westward route to Asia was possible. Some historians believe that Columbus was a Christian millennialist and apocalypticist, and that these beliefs motivated his quest for Asia in many ways. Columbus often wrote about seeking gold in the diaries of his voyages, and writes about acquiring gold in such quantity that the sovereigns will undertake and prepare to go conquer the Holy Sepulchre in fulfillment of biblical prophecy. Columbus also often wrote about converting all races to Christianity. Despite a popular misconception to the contrary, nearly all educated Westerners understood that the earth was round, a successful theory rooted in antiquity. By Columbus's time, the techniques of celestial navigation, which use the position of the sun and the stars in the sky, had long been in use by astronomers and were beginning to be implemented by mariners. As far back as the 3rd century BC, Eratosthenes had correctly computed the circumference of the earth by using simple geometry and studying the shadows cast by objects at 2 remote locations. In the 1st century BC, Posidonius confirmed Eratosthenes' results by comparing stellar observations at 2 separate locations. These measurements were widely known among scholars, but Ptolemy's use of the smaller, old-fashioned units of distance led Columbus to underestimate the size of the earth by about a third. From Pierre Dalil's Imago Mundi in 1410, Columbus learned of Alfraganus's estimate that a degree of latitude spanned 122.6 kilometers, but he did not realize that this was expressed in the Arabic mile, which was about 1,830 meters, rather than the shorter Roman mile, which was about 1,480 meters, with which he was familiar. Columbus therefore estimated the size of the earth to be about 75% of Eratosthenes' calculation, and the distance from Canary Islands to Japan as 2,400 nautical miles, which is only about 23% of the real figure. Furthermore, most scholars accepted Ptolemy's estimate that Eurasia spanned 180-degree longitude rather than the actual 130-degree longitude to the Chinese mainland, or 150-degree longitude to Japan at the latitude of Spain. He was also aware of Marco Polo's claims that Japan, which he called Cipangu, was some 2,414 kilometers to the east of China, also known as Cathay, and closer to the equator than it is. He was influenced by Toscanelli's idea that there were inhabited islands even further to the east than Japan, including the mythical Antilia, which he thought might lie not much further to the west than the Azores. Columbus therefore would have estimated the distance from the Canary Islands west of Japan to be about 9,800 kilometers, or 3,700 kilometers, depending on which estimate he used for Eurasia's longitudinal span. The true figure is now known to be vastly larger, at about 20,000 kilometers. No ship in the 15th century could have carried enough food and fresh water for such a long trip, and the dangers involved in navigating through the uncharted ocean would have been formidable. Most European navigators reasonably concluded that a westward voyage from Europe to Asia was unfeasible. Catholic monarchs, however, having completed the Reconquista, an expensive war in the Iberian Peninsula, were eager to obtain a competitive edge over other European countries in the quest for trade with the Indies. Columbus's project, though far-fetched, held the promise of such an advantage. Though Columbus was wrong about the number of degrees of longitude separated Europe from the Far East and about the distance that each degree represented, he did utilize the trade winds, which would prove to be the key to his successful navigation of the Atlantic Ocean. He planned to first sail to the Canary Islands before continuing west by utilizing the northeast trade wind. Part of the return to Spain would require traveling against the wind using a very hard sailing technique called beating, during which almost no progress can be made. To effectively make the return voyage, Columbus would need to follow the curving trade winds northeastward to the middle latitudes of the North Atlantic, where he would be able to catch the westerlies that blow eastward to the coast of Western Europe. Columbus's knowledge of the Atlantic wind patterns was imperfect at the time of his first voyage. By sailing due west from the Canary Islands during hurricane season, skirting the so-called horse latitudes of the mid-Atlantic, Columbus risked both being calmed and running into a tropical cyclone, both of which he avoided by chance. Now, by about 1484, Columbus proposed his planned voyage to King John II of Portugal. The king submitted Columbus's proposals to his expert, who rejected it on the correct belief that Columbus's estimate for a voyage of 2,400 nautical miles was only a quarter of what it should have been. In 1488, Columbus again appealed to the court of Portugal, resulting in John II again inviting him for an audience. The meeting also proved unsuccessful, in part because not long afterwards, Bartolomeu Diaz returned to Portugal with news of his successful rounding of the southern tip of Africa. Columbus sought an audience with the monarchs Ferdinand II of Aragon and Isabella I of Castile, who had united several kingdoms in the Iberian Peninsula by marrying and were ruling together. On May 1, 1486, permission having been granted, Columbus presented his plans to Queen Isabella, who in turn referred it to a committee. The experts of Spain, like their counterparts in Portugal, replied that Columbus had grossly underestimated the distance to Asia. They pronounced the idea impractical and advised the Catholic monarchs to pass on the proposed venture. To keep Columbus from taking his ideas to other places, and perhaps to keep their options open, the sovereigns gave him an allowance, totaling around 14,000 maravedis for the year, or about the annual salary of a sailor. In May 1489, the Queen sent him another 10,000 maravedis, and the same year the monarchs furnished him with a letter ordering all cities and towns under the domain to provide him food and lodging at no cost. Columbus also dispatched his brother Bartholomew to the court of Hnery VII of England to inquire whether the English crown might sponsor his expedition, but he was captured by pirates in the process and only arrived early in 1491. By that time, Columbus had retreated to La Rábida Friary, where the Spanish crown sent him 20,000 maravedis to buy new clothes and instructions to return to the Spanish court for more negotiations. Columbus waited at King Ferdinand's camp until Ferdinand and Isabella conquered Granada, the last Muslim stronghold on the Iberian Peninsula, in January 1492. A council led by Isabella's confessor, Hernando de Talavera, found Columbus's proposal to reach the Indies implausible. Columbus had left for France when Ferdinand intervened, first sending Talavera and Bishop Diego Deza to appeal to the Queen. Isabella was finally convinced by the king's clerk, Luis de Santangel, who argued that Columbus would bring his ideas elsewhere and offered to help arrange the funding. Isabella then sent a royal guard to fetch Columbus, who would travel several kilometers toward Cordoba. In April 1492, in the capitulations of Santa Fe, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella promised Columbus that if he succeeded, he would be given the rank of Admiral of the Ocean Sea and appointed Viceroy and Governor of all the new lands that he could claim for Spain. He had the right to nominate 3 persons for whom the sovereigns would choose one, for any office in the new lands. He would be entitled to 10% of all the revenues from the new lands forever. Additionally, he would also have the option of buying 1/8 interest in any commercial venture with the new lands and receive 1/8 of the profits. With this guarantee, Columbus was ready, and what happened next would make history. So what did happen next? Well, to find out, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video. This has been Mike History 2, and I hope you enjoyed.